Welcome to episode 3 of our action enhancement for our Smith & Wesson M&P 9mm. We've been installing the Apex Tactical Competition Action Enhancement Kit, and the next step and the final step in our top slide rework is going to be the replacement of the striker block. Apex sells what's referred to as the Ultimate Striker Block Kit. It comes with a striker block and a spring. Why do we do this? This is going to take out all of the grittiness in the action. These guns have been described as having a gritty trigger pull, and the main cause of that is where the trigger bar actually engages the striker block. So this guy, rather than pulling it out, reworking it, actually has a much more rounded surface on the bottom that's going to smooth up our trigger pull considerably. And this is really the first thing that's going to show us some significant reduction in trigger pull. In order to do this, we have to remove the back sight. That can be daunting for the amateur gunsmith, but most importantly, when you're working on somebody else's gun, you want to make sure you put their sights back where they were. So the first thing I do, and you don't have to do this if it's your own gun, but what I prefer to do is just take some measurements to either side of the slide. Now I do this by using the vernier directly on the center of the sight, but angled at about 45 degrees to take out some of the play in the scalloping on the finger grip, and we're seeing about 85 thousandths on that side. You know, carpenters say measure twice, cut once. Gunsmiths say measure about 15,000 times, do a little bit of work, and measure again. So we're seeing 80 thousandths on that one, and just one more time for good measure, because we want to be able to put the sight back where it was. And again, about 80 thousandths on that one. I'm going to go to the other side and do the same thing again, angling at about 45 degrees, and we're seeing just a tad over 80 thousandths on that measurement. So this sight seems to be pretty well centered, and 80 on the money. So the first step to removing the sight requires a 1/16 of an inch Allen wrench to take out the set screw for the sight. I've read the message boards on this, and there's a lot of questions about what kind of screw is this. This is a 1/16 of an inch Allen screw, and what I like to do, just to be sure, is to torque that down just a little bit tightly to make sure I have a dimple that I can return to. Now this set screw, as it comes out, is going to top out. In other words, it doesn't come all the way out. So when you feel some resistance in loosening it, the set screw's all the way out, and we're ready to pound our sight out. To do that, we're going to use a brass punch, and for some reason, I always use the steel head of my gunsmith hammer against a brass punch. I learned years ago that when you use a brass head and a brass punch, the brass head gets marred up pretty badly. So here goes the brutality. We're just going to knock this sight out, but not all the way. So we'll just get it till it starts to move. And what you see is, as the sight comes out, you'll start to see this little half moon here. This little half moon is actually the striker plate, or the striker block spring retainer. And the guys at Apex Tactical have provided this wonderful tool, which allows you to, and it's just plastic, so we don't want to hit it too hard, which allows you to keep that spring from popping out. If we take this sight all the way out, that spring's going to jump out at us. So this little tool helps us to prevent that. If you do get a spring popping out, it's always a good idea to have a magnetic broom in your shop so you can find these little springs, because you'll see this guy's pretty small. We're just going to hold this down with our finger, pull the tool back, and the plate pops up. Underneath is the striker block spring, which we're also going to be replacing. That, as you see, has a little nib retainer on it, so we'll set that to the side. And then taking our punch, we're just going to pull the striker, or push the striker block out the top of the slide. And there is our stock striker block. And again, I'll try to show you a comparison here with the Ultimate Striker Block Kit from Apex Tactical. Here's our replacement, and you can see the difference in the surfaces there. The replacement is much more rounded, much more polished, much smoother, whereas this the stock striker block almost has just a beveled angle on it. So to replace it, again, all we're going to do is drop it in place like so. You can see the difference in the springs as well. Here's the stock spring compared to the replacement spring, and you can see that that spring is lighter and significantly shorter than the one we're taking off. So we're just going to take this spring, pop it off, pop the replacement on, drop it in place. Sorry about the back of my hand there. And then we'll use our tool to compress the spring. It's important to note when you remove the sights from an M&P, like many but not all firearms, the sight removes from left to right and goes back in from right to left. That's because this channel is actually tapered. So using the tool to compress our plate, we'll put our sight back in. We'll put it back in the right way. And that prevents all our spring from popping out. So at this point, we'll get it as tight as we can, and we'll start banging it back in again with our brass punch. And again, when you're working on your own gun, you can experiment a little bit, because you can take it out to the range and drift the sight back into where it needs to be. When it's somebody else's, you want to try to get it as close as you can to the original position. So that looks about right. Now we're going to take a measurement. Again, measure 15,000 times, file a little bit, and measure again. And you can see we've got about 8 thousandths on that side. Measure this side. And we'll give it just a few more gentle taps. Measure again. I'm looking at 80 thousandths there. We're at 80 thousandths there. And so we're good to go to torque down our retaining screw. And there you have it. Top slide work is all done. It's important to note, I guess, before you start this, in our last episode we talked about the removal and replacement of the striker spring. The striker does have to be removed for this whole process to take place. So thanks for watching. Next episode we're going to go down to all of our framework and replace the sear spring and the trigger turn spring. Stay tuned.